Much of our world runs on batteries. Heck, you're probably watching this video on a battery-powered device. The world has been transformed by the innovations in battery tech over the last 150 years or so. Whether it's the lead-acid batteries that start our cars or the lithium-ion batteries powering our portables, batteries help get us where we want to go. But it's more than just our personal devices. A reliable grid powered by green energy is going to need batteries too. Not just electric cars, think solar power on a cloudy day. You need batteries to store energy for when the grid needs it. Lucky for us, there's an old battery showing new promise for long-duration energy storage. And its secret is rust. Let's start with a quick refresher on modern battery tech, just in case you're, like me, and a little rusty on your electrochemistry. Today we're talking about chemical batteries, which use the power of chemistry to store energy that can later be released as electrical energy. Electrical energy, or electricity, is the thing you get when charged particles like electrons move around. The flow of those charges is called a current, and while batteries can't store electricity, they can store chemicals that produce currents during a series of reactions. To do this, they need three components: an anode to release electrons, a cathode to accept electrons, and an electrolyte, a substance capable of conducting all those moving charges. Lithium-ion batteries are probably the ones you've heard most about. They're in cell phones and electric cars, and they've changed the game in terms of rechargeability and portability. But before them, there were lead-acid batteries, the OG rechargeable batteries, first invented in 1859. If you drive a gas-powered car, you still probably have one of these under your hood. They're heavy and they take a long time to power back up when they die, which if you've ever had to jumpstart your car, you're probably very familiar with. Lead-acid batteries have a negative lead anode and a positive lead dioxide cathode, separated by an aqueous solution of sulfuric acid and water. And that's why they're so heavy. Lead is not known for being lightweight, and quite frankly, water isn't either. You get power from the battery when the lead plates react with the sulfuric acid, causing charges to move around in the process. Eventually, everything that can react has reacted, and both plates are electrically neutral. That's when your battery is dead. You can recharge it by slowly putting electricity back into the battery, which causes the anode to return to being lead oxide and the cathode to becoming lead. The problem is that as these materials redeposit, it changes their microscopic structure, ultimately degrading the battery's efficiency. Of course, other kinds of chemical batteries came to market after the invention of lead-acid batteries. You might also be familiar with alkaline batteries, named for the alkaline, or basic, electrolyte inside. These are the batteries that go in your TV remote or your cat's laser pointer, and they're typically designed to be disposable. Some can be recharged, but degrade after just a few recharging cycles. Their limited rechargeability means they're not a good option for variable power storage, like the kind we'd need to stabilize an entire power grid. In comparison, lithium-ion batteries were like a pop star double threat of rechargeability and portability. They hit the market in the early 1990s just in time to help miniaturize portable cell phones at the turn of the century. Lithium-ion batteries are way lighter than lead-acid batteries, partly because lithium ions are so tiny compared to lead atoms. This lets the battery pack way more charge into a small volume. The electrolyte also doesn't get consumed during the discharging or charging process, enabling the battery to operate with less electrolyte overall. These batteries charge relatively fast and hold onto that charge decently well. When not in use, they lose less than 2% of their charge per month. They can also be drained and recharged hundreds of times before degrading any noticeable amount. And in the battery world, those kinds of stats are just mwah. Many of these benefits are possible because of the unique arrangements of the lithium ions within the anode and cathode layers. On the anode side, the lithium ions are shuffled between layers of carbon in the form of graphite. When they escape the graphite, they're transported through the electrolytes over to the cathode side, which is usually made of something like lithium cobalt oxide. Recharging reverses that process, detaching some lithium ions from the cathode and sticking them back between the layers of the carbon anode. But as miraculous as these batteries have been, they have some problems. They're made with rare minerals that are expensive, dangerous, and environmentally harmful to mine. You really should be recycling your batteries, by the way. And companies, you should be designing stuff to be reusable. Don't think you weren't gonna get away from some B-camera finger wagging. Until then, we're relying on fossil fuels like coal and natural gas for our energy needs. These resources can be burned at any time of the day or night to generate electricity. They're like nature's battery. It just takes millions of years to recharge them. The good news is that energy sources like wind and solar are getting cheaper and being deployed at greater volumes every year. But a reliable grid needs more than just generation. It needs the ability to store energy and deploy it whenever and wherever it's needed most. The sun doesn't always shine and the wind doesn't always blow. Electricity demand is at historically high levels. Extreme weather events are becoming more frequent, stressing the grid for days at a time, and transmission lines can only move so much power from where it's generated to where it's needed. So we need capacity that's able to store many days worth of energy, enough to prevent outages through any period of grid stress, whether that's a cloudy week, a demand surge, or a severe weather event. And the solution might be rust. It turns out that rust is not always synonymous with being useless or bound for the scrap heap. In this case, rust is literally powerful. See, there's a whole class of batteries that use a pure metal as an anode, and air as the cathode. And iron happens to be a really abundant, non-toxic, affordable metal that we could use for exactly this purpose. These appropriately named iron-air batteries basically work by rusting to release energy, and unrusting to recharge the battery. And all it takes is iron, air, and water. These batteries are built from sheets of iron surrounded by an electrolyte with thin channels of air to provide oxygen. When the battery breathes in, it draws oxygen from the air to oxidize the metal, which in the case of iron is also known as rusting. The oxygen from the air first reacts with the electrolyte, which then reacts in several stages with the metallic iron. The orange-red compound you get if you run your cast iron through the dishwasher is called hematite, and that's what we normally think of as rust. And though in most iron-air batteries the chemistry is slightly different, the idea of oxidizing the iron is the same. And it's this flow of electrons generated from the reaction of iron with oxygen that creates a current in the battery. It can then be recharged by applying electricity to the rust, which separates the oxygen molecules from the metallic iron. The oxygen dissolves back into the electrolytes and then is breathed out into the air by the battery. The greatest advantage of iron-air batteries is that they're built from incredibly abundant resources. They also have a higher capacity than lithium-ion batteries at about 1/10 the cost. They're safe, as none of the components are toxic or as fire-prone as lithium batteries, and they should last a long time without degrading. The kicker is that this tech isn't new. Rust-based batteries were first investigated in the 1960s by NASA, and then continued to be explored by researchers in the 70s. Early results were positive, especially given how cost-effective these batteries can be. An early target application at the time was battery-powered electric cars, a hot topic around then due to concerns about oil availabilities in the 1970s. It turns out, though, that iron-air batteries weren't the right fit for cars. They were too heavy, and they're slow, and steady discharge isn't exactly what you want when you need to quickly merge onto a highway. And since grid-scale storage wasn't really on the table as an application back then, research largely fell by the wayside. But as the need for long-duration grid storage started heating up, researchers started dusting them off for a second look, and they might be just what we need to stabilize a sustainable energy grid. One US-based company called Form Energy is working on deploying these batteries to power grids over the coming years. Their batteries can store about 100 hours worth of energy that can be slowly discharged over the course of several days. This could provide stable energy throughout cloudy days, cold winter storms, and more. Iron-air batteries do still have some downsides. They recharge pretty slowly, and their power output tends to be on the slow and steady side. But in the context of stabilizing a power grid, these are basically non-issues. We want slow, steady, and stationary. Most of the time, we wouldn't need them to discharge quickly, and we could always supplement with lithium-ion batteries for the cases when we do need quick power. Form Energy has conducted tens of thousands of tests on its iron-air battery systems, begun commercial manufacturing, and is just starting to deploy them at utility scale. That said, like any new energy technology, there's still plenty of work ahead to discover problems and solve them. And luckily, they aren't the only researchers dedicated to helping these batteries meet their full potential. This is pretty promising tech that proves it can really pay off to occasionally dip into the archives. The future of green energy may actually end up being a more rusty orange color. Support for this episode was provided by Breakthrough Energy.